The Senate will come to order. We have a special guest that's going to lead us in the pledge today, Carrie Valdez. She's 38 years old. She and her family have strong roots in the San Luis Valley. Carrie is the Vice President of People First for her local chapter and additionally on the state level. Carrie is recognized in her community as a talented speaker and an advocate for persons with disabilities. She is also very involved with Special Olympics and has been an active volunteer for the Alamosa Adventure Center, a community organization providing respite care for children with disabilities. Carrie has received services from Blue Peaks Developmental Services beginning at 3 years of age and has served as an agency board member. Would you please welcome Carrie? Please, now.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Majors, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar, Balmer, Baumgardner, Carroll, Cook, Crowder, Donovan, Garcia, Grantham, Guzman, Heath, Hill,
Absent.
Hodge, Holbert, John, Johnston, Jones, Hill, Kafalis, Kerr, Lambert, Lundberg, Marble, Martinez Jimenez,
Excused.
Merrifield, Neville, Newell, Roberts, Scheffel, Scott, Sonnenberg, Stedman, Todd, Ulibarri, Woods. Mr. President.
Here. With 34 present, 0 absent, 1 excused, a quorum is present. Senator Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the journal from February 17th be dispensed with and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That motion is adopted, as well as the journal. Committee reports. Senate Services.
February 18, 2015, correctly printed. Senate Bills 178, 179, 180, 181, 182, and 183 correctly engrossed. Senate Bills 15, 116, 128. Senate Joint Resolution 4 correctly re-engrossed. Senate Bills 80 and 142 correctly revised. House Joint Resolution 1012 correctly re-revised. House Bills 1017 and 1052 correctly enrolled. Senate Bill 166.
Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 184 by Senator Holbert and Representative Fields concerning enforcement of compulsory education requirements.
Senate Bill 184 is assigned to education.
Senate Bill 185 by Senator Johnston and Representative Fields concerning provisions to improve police operations.
Senate Bill 185 is assigned to Judiciary and Finance. Third reading of bills. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 128.
They're not here. Okay.
Senate Bill 128 by Senator Carroll and Representatives Landgraf and Primavera concerning reports to law enforcement by medical facilities with the consent of a victim of sexual assault.
Minority Leader Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 128 on third reading, final passage, and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 128 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Newell, Senator Stedman, Senator Roberts, Senator Crowder, Senator Guzman, Senator Heath, Senator Johnston, Senator Garcia, Senator Cook, Senator Kafalis, Senator Jones, Senator Merrifield, Senator Todd, Senator Donovan, Senator Kerr, Senator Aguilar, Senator Ulibarri, Senator John, Senator Scott, Senator Baumgardner. Please add the President. Too late. Senator Grantham. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 116.
Senate Bill 116 by Senator Stedman and Representative Garnett concerning needle stick prevention.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 116 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 116? Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 116 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Heath, Senator Kafalis, Senator Newell, Senator Todd, Senator Roberts, Senator Aguilar, Minority Leader Carroll, Senator Cook, Senator Grantham, Senator Hodge, Senator Jones, Senator Neville, Senator Guzman, Senator Merrifield, Senator Marble, Senator Baumgardner, Senator John, Senator Ulibarri, Senator Garcia, Senator Woods, Senator Hill, Senator Johnston. Co-sponsors: please add the President. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 15.
Senate Bill 15 by Senator Kafalis and Representative Primavera concerning clarification of benefits for autism spectrum disorders and health benefit plans issued in this state.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I move Senate Bill 15 on third reading and final passage and respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 15? Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 15 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Crowder, Senator Woods, Senator Heath, Senator Holbert, Senator Aguilar, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Donovan, Senator Guzman, Senator Roberts, Senator Newell, Senator Kerr, Senator Neville, Senator Todd, Senator Merrifield, Senator Grantham, Senator Lambert, Senator Scott, Senator Johnston, Senator Garcia, Senator John, Senator Stedman, Senator Hodge, Senator Shuffle, Senator Lundberg, Senator Marble, second wave. Co-sponsors: Minority Leader Carroll. It's working. Getting more pledges. More pledges. Going once. Please add the president. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege. Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. Colleagues, this is a Career and Technical Education Month, and I've had the privilege of doing either a resolution or a tribute on this subject ever since I've been in this body. And we're going to do a tribute this morning to the Career and Technical Education students that are with us and those 147,000 around the state who are in this. With that, the tribute reads as follows. The Senate of the Colorado Legislature, concerned in the first regular session of the 70th General Assembly, hereby extends heartiest congratulations and commendation to Colorado Career and Technical Education students. The Colorado Career and Technical Education Association, in conjunction with the Association of Career and Technical Education, has declared the month of February 2015 as Career and Technical Education Month. In Colorado, more than 147,000 secondary and post-secondary students are enrolled in CTE programs. CTE students benefit from developing college-ready and career-ready skills, and the state of Colorado benefits from their dedication when they enter college or become skilled members of our workforce. On request of Senator Rowley Heath, given this 18th day of February 2015, State Capitol, Denver, Colorado, signed Bill L. Cadman, President of the Senate. Colleagues, would you please welcome some of the career and technical education students from around the state who are present with us today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mark, do you want to be recognized before? No. Second reading? No. I'm going to move some off of second reading. General orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request that Senate Bill 97 and Senate Bill 119 be removed from the general order second reading of bills consent calendar and moved to the general order second reading of bills calendar.
Granted. Senate Bill 97 and Senate Bill 119 will be removed from the consent calendar and placed at the end of the regular general order second reading of bills calendar. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of all the bills? Oh, excuse me. Just trying to really hurry this up. It's called the new supermotion consent calendar. I guess I should have cleared this with the minority leader as well. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills consent calendar.
You have heard the official motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of general orders, second reading of bills consent calendar. Senator Holbert will be the chair.
The committee will come to order. The court rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, would you please read the titles to all the bills listed on the consent calendar?
Senate Bill 111 by Senator Lambert and Representative Hamner concerning the continuous appropriation to the Department of Education of monies in the Educator Licensure Cash Fund. House Bill 1039 by Representative Tyler and Senator Neville concerning the donation of prescription medications by licensed healthcare facilities. Senate Bill 103 by Senator Lundberg and Representative Becker Kay concerning continuation of the Compliance Advisory Panel and a connection therewith implementing the recommendations of the Department of Regulatory Agencies as contained in the 2014 Sunset Report.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee adopt the bills on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar, which includes Senate Bill 111, Senate Bill 1030, House Bill 1039, and Senate Bill 103, and ask for an aye vote.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion of any of the bills listed on the general orders consent calendar? The motion before the body is the adoption of all the bills on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bills are adopted. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The committee shall rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
February 18, 2015, Mr. President, your committee of the whole brings reports that under consideration of the following attached bills being second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 111, Senate Bill 103, passed on second reading in order and gross placed on the counter for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1039, passed on second reading in order to revise, placed on the counter for third reading, final passage.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee adopt the report.
Is there further discussion on the committee of the whole report? Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 15-111, Senate Bill 15-103 passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 15-1030, House Bill 1039 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. General order, second reading of bills. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege. Senator Crowder.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have the lady that led the Pledge of Allegiance as part of Blue Peaks Developmental Service out of Alamosa. They've been actually in business down there for 45 years. They serve the entire San Luis Valley, and they've done a remarkable job down there. We have some folks from Blue Peaks Developmental Service from Alamosa, and if you would just take a moment to please join with me and welcome them to the Senate. If you folks would rise. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
We're going to take a senatorial 5. The Senate will come back to order. We will add Senator Martinez-Humenick to the roll. And we are back to the General Order's second reading of bills portion of today's program. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Order second reading of bills calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of General Orders second reading of bills. Senator Holbert will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 8.
Senate Bill 8 by Senator Roberts, Representative Vehil, concerning the promotion of water conservation in the land use planning process.
Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move that Senate Bill 8 lay over to February 20.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 8 will lay over to February 20. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 18.
Senate Bill 18 by Senator Neville and Representative Neville, concerning the repeal of the late vehicle registration fee.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 018 and ask for a favorable vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 18? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 18. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 18 is adopted. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 115.
Senate Bill 115 by Senator Hill and Representative Pabon, concerning the sunset review of the medical marijuana programs.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move that Senate Bill 115 lay over to the end of the second reading calendar.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 115 will lay over to the end of the calendar. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 32.
Senate Bill 32 by Senator Marble, concerning allowing a law-abiding person to carry a concealed handgun without a permit, and in connection therewith preserving the current laws restricting the carrying of concealed handguns on certain property, including school grounds.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 32 and the committee report, J002.
To the committee report, Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee report coming out of appropriations basically changes and decreases some of the money from the cash funds. Appropriations to the Department of Public Safety are adjusted as follows. Cash funds appropriation for identification personal services is decreased by $28,520, and related FTE is decreased by 1.0 FTE. Cash funds appropriations for identification operating expenses is decreased by $63,418, and the cash fund appropriation for personal services is decreased by $21,246. The cash funds appropriation for the background check cash fund for operating expenses is decreased by $404. And then on page 1, line 105, strike grounds and substitute grounds and reducing appropriations.
Is there further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Senator Marble, to the bill.
The bill has an amendment which basically is very simple.
Senator Marble, would you care to move your amendment?
I move Amendment L001.
L001.
It's basically a technical having to do with a comma And it takes on page 1, line 20, strike grounds, comma, and substitute grounds and. That's the extent of L002. I ask for
Mr. Majors, would you please read L001?
Amendment 0001 to Senate Bill 32 by Senator Marble, amend the Appropriations Committee report dated February 13, 2015, page 1, line 20, strike grounds, comma, and substitute grounds and.
Is there further discussion on L001? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L001. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and L001 is adopted. Senator Marble to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 32 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 32? Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask the sponsor, in regards to the Colorado Constitution, Section 13, where it says right to bear arms, the right of no person to keep and bear arms in defense of his home, person, and property, or in aid of the civil power when thereto legally summoned, shall be called in question. But nothing herein contained shall be construed to justify the practice of carrying concealed weapons. I just would like to understand why we are even in the midst of this debate, given how the Constitution states that concealed carry is not a right.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll field that question. First off, I think there's a word shall not be called into question, as the Constitution states. But the question posed as to, so why in the world are we doing this, is a great question, because the answer is the Constitution does not specifically deal with this issue. It specifically excludes it from the Constitution. It does not prohibit the legislature from taking such an action. Therefore, it's entirely appropriate that this be a matter that the legislature look at. And in 1876, the circumstances were that if you carried, they wanted you to carry open carry. And that's what shall not be questioned. Well, fast forward well over 100 years, 130 plus years, and the circumstances are different, and to carry concealed is the more appropriate means. Hence, this bill is to clarify that the people of Colorado can, in fact, carry concealed.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I would ask my esteemed colleague then why this bill then should be referred to the people, since this is constitutional. And if we're going to make a change to the Constitution, regardless of when it was written, it says, but nothing herein contained shall be construed to justify the practice of carrying concealed weapons. Therefore, that should be changed by asking the people to vote on that issue.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually do want to go back and look at the specific language that that was just referred to, but again, this is an authority that the legislature has. Therefore, it's most appropriate that we address this in statute. This will not make any change to the Constitution whatsoever. This will, in statute, specify that which the Constitution excluded, and it's not prohibiting it, it's simply saying, but the Constitution is not dealing with that arena. That's up to the legislature to determine. This bill is most appropriate. And I would also add that this is a practice that is becoming more common in other states. The state of Wyoming, I understand, passed similar legislation just recently. The state of Arizona passed similar legislation, I want to say 5-6 years ago. The state of Alaska has recently passed legislation very similar to this bill. The state of Vermont has a policy in place. They didn't pass legislation. They simply never have changed their policy from concealed carry being a legal option for all citizens in that state. Therefore, it's constitutionally in the realm of authority for the legislature. Great question. Let's get on to the debate for the actual merits of the bill, however, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 32? Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, in 2003, I was a freshman legislator in the State House and was invited to join discussions on the legislation that created our concealed carry permit system. As it was known that I was a gun owner from Colorado Springs, so I had the opportunity to be involved in these discussions. And as we drafted the bill, I had some input. And my concern is a bipartisan issue that we decided together across party lines for legislation that has been proven to be effective is now going to be dismantled. So this bill, 32, would dismantle Colorado's concealed carry permitting system to allow domestic abusers, people with violent criminal histories, people who have never handled or even fired a gun, to carry one hidden and loaded throughout the entire state, including colleges, campuses, in parks, and on crowded city streets. So, specifically, our current law requires firearms training. I had a hand in placing that amendment in the original bill. This requires Colorado persons to demonstrate competency with a handgun in order to get a concealed carry permit. I was involved in the amendment that said that alcoholics under current law who are committed to a treatment due to severe alcohol abuse and people who have been arrested multiple times for driving under the influence cannot get a permit to carry a concealed handgun. This bill will allow alcoholics to carry hidden, loaded guns in public. I was involved in the amendment that gave sheriffs the authorities to deny a concealed carry permit to people who pose a danger to themselves or to others. In addition, if this bill were to pass, domestic abusers, people subject to active domestic violence restraining orders, would be able to get a concealed carry permit. Also, people who are under a violent charge, Colorado current law prohibits people charged with violent misdemeanors from carrying concealed loaded guns in public. This bill, 32, would lift this prohibition and allow these potentially dangerous people to carry hidden guns in public. In summary, we had a good bill back in 2003. It's been effective. I would urge us to keep things as they are.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm up here to urge an aye vote on Senate Bill 32. I carried constitutional carry legislation in 2012, and it's been carried ever since. The one thing that we need to do here is focus on not the rhetoric around the bill, but let's focus on what the bill actually does. It allows those who obey the law to protect their families, their businesses, without a permit from the state of Colorado. Do you need a permit to vote? It's an inalienable right. Second Amendment is also an inalienable right. Now let's talk about where this is in use right now, because we hear a lot of fear that's often espoused about constitutional carry. Let's talk about where we actually have the law in place and what is happening. Just north to us, the state of Wyoming, constitutional carry state. Alaska, also Arizona, constitutional carry state. And let's not forget, this is not a liberal conservative issue. The state of Vermont has been constitutional carry since its inception. I urge an aye vote on this.
Senator Marble? Pass. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we look at this bill, basically the message we want to send is our government believes that the public in general is not dangerous and will probably not be the ones out there inevitably committing crimes. It was posted on a news article I read about a gang member who was on a radio program and who said that by just merely having a piece of paper, that does not prevent someone who wants to commit a crime from committing it. Concealed carry is actually a coat tax, because if you wear an open carry, it's maybe 6 inches down from where it was. You carry a gun, you carry a gun. And when you look at the fact that when you go to purchase a gun, which most all law-abiding citizens do, they go through a background check. That background check makes it so the right people in law enforcement and CBI know whether or not you are fit to own a gun or purchase a gun. And if you have police contact after you lawfully purchase that gun, and that police contact determines whether or not you should still be fit to have a gun, well, they will either remove it and every gun off the premise of your property, or you can keep them if you have been unjustly accused. What is wrong with that system? Why aren't we looking at the criminal minds? That's where the problem lies, not with law-abiding gun purchases. And by saying that you will get, this allows these people who are committing crimes, to carry concealed, well, let me tell you something. Those people already are, and no law is going to change that because they're the criminals. All you're looking at is the people who are very, very lawfully purchasing a gun and carrying a gun. They have done nothing wrong, nothing. And you're looking at positioning a gun as being whether it's lawful or not. Here a person puts on his open carry gun on his hip. It's snowing outside. He's in his home. He goes to his car to get in his car, but he throws a coat on. Now he's committed a crime because that open carry that was on his hip now may be covered by a winter coat. So now by the mere fact that a man or a woman wants to stay warm they have become a criminal. Is that right? Is that what the purpose that we want our laws to arbitrarily just kind of make somebody lawful or not? I mean, we have some problems here. We have problems with a lot of laws that are written. And I would say, let's focus on criminal minds, not on making lawful people criminals. And I would say a yes vote for SB 32 would give the people the knowledge in saying that, yes, your government does understand and that you are worth trusting because you passed that background check to get the gun and you have not had police contact, which warranted confiscation of that firearm.
Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, I'm here, of course, to ask your giving a no vote to this bill. I truly have enjoyed my relationship with the good senator from not sure where she lives. And I can't say her name, but she has a blue jacket on and rather long blonde hair, and she's about 4'10". I'm not speaking about the man on the other side. Oh, here it is. Oh, great. This is great. The gentlewoman from Fort Collins. I have truly enjoyed working with her in ways that I can't really say publicly here on television. But I want to speak to what I think is the tragedy of this bill, what could be the tragedy of this bill. We have a lot of us and a lot of people around the state of Colorado that are basically good folks, have never broken the law, are well-meaning, good community people. I consider myself one of those. But we also know that at any given moment, if the right things happen, if the storms come, if all of the storms come, that person who has always obeyed the law could find themselves at a moment where they could take their life or someone else's life. A person like myself that has yet to go through the training and to get a gun could have the opportunity, if all of these things went wrong, to hurt myself or to hurt others. I think if we pass this bill, it can mean a tragedy for children and for families and for innocent people. I do understand the importance of rights, and I do respect them. I do understand. I am from Texas. I grew up in an area where every one of my brothers and father had a gun. And I imagine those were in the days, because I'm quite old, that there might not have been regulations to get a background check. I'm not sure. So I understand the importance. I have a nephew, a great nephew in Texas, who is on the team, his high school team, where they are going to contest, and he wins contest, his shooting contest, and probably is going to get a scholarship. So I do understand the importance of the right to have a gun. But to take away a law that better ensures that whoever has one, better ensures that that person is going to be safe and that the children and families around this person is going to be safe as well. I've heard from so many constituents, over 75% of them want me to help defeat this bill. Now that leaves maybe 25% of my constituents that would want this bill to pass. But I'm going by the 75% or so who are very concerned. And so I'm also speaking on their behalf because I am their representative in that way. So I urge you and my good friend from Fort Collins to really reconsider what this bill will mean to the safety of our state. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Cook. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here to ask for an aye vote on this bill. You know, a lot of people come to me and say, with your 30-plus years of experience in law enforcement, why would you support this bill? Won't it make it more dangerous for law enforcement, for the officers on the streets? And my answer is no. It will not make it more dangerous. Law enforcement has to use universal precautions. They have to assume every car they stop, every person they come in contact with has a gun. And they're going to have to use their training in officer safety to the best of their ability to handle the situation and just assume that they're confronting somebody with a weapon. You know, we heard testimony from both sides. and very good testimony, as a matter of fact. And one lady that was testified against the bill said, do people really want to live in a society where you have to wonder if the person next to you is carrying a firearm? My question is, if I were a criminal living in a society where more people had firearms, law-abiding citizens had firearms, would I want to commit a crime against that person? Now, I'd like to address something from that my fine senator from Colorado Springs mentioned. This bill will not dismantle the CCW, the Carry Concealed Weapons Permit law, and I appreciate his efforts back in 2003 because it really codified and made it easier for law enforcement. This bill, like I said, will not dismantle the permit process. According to the fiscal note, only 10% of the people who already have concealed weapons permits will not file for another permit. I contend most people will still get the CCW permits because they want to be able to carry their firearms concealed in other states. Right now, there's 38 states that have reciprocal agreements with Colorado that can carry concealed. The only way to continue to carry in those 38 states is to have a concealed weapons permit. We also heard about the training. Well, correct, there has to be some form of training to get a CCW permit. But that doesn't mean you have to handle the gun. As a matter of fact, most training is in classroom, and people never have to go to the range and actually shoot, or to show that they can safely handle a weapon. So I'm here to ask for an aye vote, and I support this bill. Thank you.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate those comments from my esteemed colleague from Greeley. But I'm a little surprised in that, as I said earlier, I was involved in the amendment that gave sheriffs the authority to deny a concealed carry permit based upon their knowledge as sheriffs, who really have really intimate knowledge of their communities, of individuals in the communities, and sheriffs at this time can deny a permit based upon their knowledge that an individual is dangerous for some reason or another, and they would lose that power if this bill were to pass. But I want to talk about firearms training. My father owned, I have no idea how many guns. He was basically a gun collector, taught me gun safety, and I took the NRA gun safety course when I was a teenager. My 12th year birthday present was a .22 rifle. My 13th was a 20 gauge shotgun, and my 15th was a .30-06 hunting rifle. I was taught safety on all of those weapons, and the problem with this bill, it will remove firearms training that currently requires a person demonstrate competence with a handgun in order to get a concealed carry permit. And I'm really pleased to see that my colleagues, the Assistant Majority Leader, the current Assistant Majority Leader, and the President Pro Tem also supported gun firearm training in 2013. This bill would remove that very reasonable and necessary training for somebody who's going to have a special permit to carry a gun concealed. I would ask you to oppose this bill and keep us on the path that we've been on for the past 10, 11 years with a bill that has been proven to be useful and promote safety in our state.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some statements have been made about what I do support and don't support. In 2003, I did support the current concealed carry legislation. And I did proudly because it did the right thing. Remember, before that, it was totally up to the sheriffs, individually, county by county, and there was a patchwork. We actually had two bills that year, Senate Bill 24 and Senate Bill 25, one establishing concealed carry, the other one stating that it's of statewide interest so as to circumvent counties that wanted to go a different direction. And it's poor description, but adequate for the moment here. I supported that because I believe the people of Colorado, honest, law-abiding citizens, should be able to defend themselves and their families and concealed carry is the very best mechanism in today's world. I support this bill as well because it does the very same thing. Remember, we've had this policy of concealed carry in place for many years. This bill simply expands that to say for every legal, honest citizen out there, you can carry concealed. Pretty straightforward. It does not take away the concealed carry permit system. The good senator from Weld County described that affords you some opportunities in the other states that honor the reciprocity of our concealed carry laws here in Colorado. That's a good thing. So is this bill, and that's why I believe it is a very good policy, and it will yield safety, deterrence. I do this not because I support this measure because it is a measure that is good for the people of Colorado. It's a safety issue for the people of Colorado, for the families of Colorado. Deterrence is the very best mechanism we can put in place. And I believe that we need to say yes and move forward.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 32 and want to speak to some of the concerns that were raised by the previous speaker. In the comments that were made, I think I want to recognize the truth there, which is that this does not replace the concealed permit system. You still can get a concealed carry permit if you'd like. But those who cannot actually pass the requirements of the permitting system are going to just go around them, because under this law, that's what they're entitled to do. So if they can't pass a background check because they're a dangerous individual and they have a record, they don't have to actually do that. They don't have to go through the permitting process because this gives them the loophole. If they are an alcoholic and they've been committed to treatment due to severe alcohol abuse, they can go around the system, and law enforcement doesn't have to know about it because this loophole allows them to do it. If they have violent charges on their record, guess what? Law enforcement doesn't have to approve their concealed carry permit, and they're not going to go for one. They're just going to go around the system and use this loophole to make sure that they can carry concealed and be untrained and potentially dangerous and have access to a loaded firearm that's concealed from the public's view. Seems like that actually flies in the direct face of public safety and the claim that's being made here. We have a system in place that was designed side by side with law enforcement to ensure that our sheriffs could grant permits to people that they know have the training necessary, that have passed a background check, and are responsible enough to carry concealed. This provides the loophole, the workaround, to make sure that someone who maybe has never fired a gun, has never received in-person training, is allowed to carry concealed, hidden from public, and they may even be dangerous. That doesn't sound like that's good for public safety. I respectfully ask for a no vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 32? Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the previous senator just made my point. We are talking about let's keep these people in two different categories. What the previous senator spoke about were the unlawful, the criminal minds. That's exactly the people who are not going to adhere to this bill or any law, and that's why they're criminals. Any citizen who can legally purchase a firearm in Colorado is fully vetted. That is why so many criminals purchase their firearms illegally. It's the fact that any citizen who is fully vetted when they purchase that firearm should be able to choose how to carry it, either open or concealed. Can you tell me the difference? Now, what is really the difference of 6 inches on a person, on them carrying, which makes it legal or illegal, wearing a coat or not? A piece of clothing can now all of a sudden make all the difference in the world, when maybe that person just went to put on a coat because it was cold outside, now wears a concealed carry. You know, it's something that we really need to look at. And really, please, senators, keep separate the fact that we have the criminal mind that does always intentionally break the law. This bill does not do anything but let a lawful person carry an open or concealed, the way they choose. This is addressing those who are law-abiding. And you know as well as I, we like to mix the basket of bananas and squash. And this is what we're doing now. Criminals and the good law-abiding citizens should not be put in the same basket. And I think it's insulting to the people of Colorado who are lawfully carrying to be thought of as criminal when all they did got fully vetted, had the background check, haven't had contact with police, and they adhere to all laws. All crimes that are committed, people, if they had a concealed carry, if it's a domestic violence and they're in, you know that they lose the right to carry. They lose all of their weapons. Law enforcement takes care of that. There are guardrails all over our laws for that. Let's keep criminals and law-abiding citizens separate and vote yes on SB 32.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to respond to one of the questions that was raised by the previous speaker, asking what's the difference between carrying concealed and carrying in plain view. And it's that when you carry in plain view, you can make a determination. There are other people in that space. There are people like me. I go to public spaces like grocery stores and to restaurants with my children, my 16-year-old and my 4-year-old. And if I saw someone carrying in plain view, I might make a decision about my safety, saying, I might not choose to stay in that grocery store or in that restaurant or in that movie theater because I can see in plain view that someone is carrying a weapon and I don't feel safe. But when we talked about concealed carry, we said if you're going to be carrying concealed, you should have the training and responsibility to ensure that you're going to be a responsible person with what is a very unique circumstance, which is concealing a loaded handgun in public. That you should go through in-person training to know that you can actually handle that weapon, that you've actually passed in-person training, you've gone through a background check, and you've been allowed by the sheriff of your county to carry concealed. That's why we have the permitting process. One thing I want to raise here is just something that stands out to me. We're talking about the concealed carry permit process and the idea that people should be allowed to carry without a permit, and we keep referencing back to background checks, that the current system allows for background checks. But in the context of this bill and how it plays with other legislation that's been introduced in this chamber and that is currently awaiting full hearing in front of the Senate, that this, coupled with a bill to eliminate background checks, would mean that people could carry without going through a criminal background check, which means that those people could actually have access to a handgun, a loaded handgun that hasn't passed a background check. So when we're talking about safety, I think we need to talk in the full context of how this bill was introduced in the package it was introduced in, that if this bill is to pass and the other bill were to pass, it would mean that people could carry concealed without a background check, and those dangerous individuals that we do not want carrying weapons hidden from public view shouldn't be able to do it. Simple as that.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 32? Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reiterate some of the comments that I made earlier, and that is my deepest concern, and that is that for any of us, stable, good, law-abiding citizens, anything can happen. A lot of things can come up for us in our lives. We can move from a place of hope to a place of despair. We can move from being not angry to being angry. We can move to all kinds of places that make us a volatile person at any given time. And if someone doesn't know that we are carrying a weapon, And I'm talking about a weapon, a deadly weapon. We're talking about a deadly weapon here. We're not talking about something that's not deadly. We're talking about a deadly weapon. We must be careful about what we're doing here. We must understand that in our own humanity, at any given point, we too could become that person who could take another life or who could cause the death of other people. The more that we have everyone go through these checks and balances, the safer our families and children will be. Isn't it worth that extra step? Isn't it worth that extra dollar to make sure that everyone who has a deadly weapon on their side is indeed the person that has gone through these checks? Isn't it worth it to our children? Isn't it worth it to our families and communities? Just another step, just another few dollars. I ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 32.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this will be my final statement at the mic. Well, I've got 3 or 4 or 5 more pages if you'd like. I could probably stretch this out, but I'm not trying to filibuster. I'm trying to tell you some facts. And the fact is, we have a good law currently. The fact is, since 2003, 3,800 people have been denied a concealed carry permit because of our current law. Our law that I was involved in, that I had input in, that I co-sponsored, that I voted for, does not impinge or violate a person's Second Amendment rights, and the change to the current law is only going to make our public places less safe. I would urge you to vote no.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 32? Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a final point on this bill. We're talking about safety. We're talking about honest citizens in Colorado being empowered to protect themselves and their families. We are talking about safety here. We're talking about deterrence. They talk about a deadly weapon. Well, a car can be a deadly weapon. A knife can be a deadly weapon. A baseball bat can be a deadly weapon. A fist can be a deadly weapon. But in this bill, we're talking about ensuring that the good guy has the ability to defend themselves and defend their families and defend their community. I believe this is a good bill because it will yield safety for the people of Colorado. We're talking about deterrence.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The good senator from Larimer County did say when you're talking about weapons, deadly weapons, I just want to give you a couple of statistics. And these statistics are pretty amazing when you look at it. It's compared 10 big killers in the U.S. And it goes from firearm homicide, 11,493. Non-firearm homicide is number 9, and that is 16,799. Non-firearm covers the use of many very varied weapons, including knives, bats, hammers, poisons, and more. When you look at the fact that it is the person who decides what to use, and non-firearm homicides far outnumber the ones that do use firearms. And I want to take another correlation. and look at the fact that in this statistic of firearm homicides, they include Chicago. Chicago in 1982 passed a ban on all handguns except for those registered with the city before the ban was enacted. Today, it's a very, very sad number, but since the handgun ban took effect, the number of murders in Chicago committed using handguns has been 40% higher than before the ban. When you look at the top 10 killers, it goes all the way up. I'm going to read you through some, and really you have to take note of what is it really about the gun that we fear so much. Unintentional falls was 24,792. Drug abuse killed 25,500. Unintentional poisoning, 31,758. Motor vehicle accidents, 34,485. Alcohol abuse, 107,400. Unintentional injuries, 118,021. Medical errors, 195,000. Tobacco use, 529,000. Those are some pretty amazing statistics and numbers. And I really suggest that when you look about us and you hear all of the debate against Senate Bill 32, and then you recognize the top 10 killers in the U.S., let's really look at what are we afraid of? What are we afraid of? And you know what it boils down to? It's the criminal mind. Don't inhibit law-abiding citizens from carrying on a constitutional right. Vote yes for SB 32.
Senator Holbert. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I rise in support of Senate Bill 32. Constitutional carry is not a new topic in this building. In 2011, I was proud that a constitutional carry bill passed the House on a vote of 40 to 25. All 33 Republicans then and 7 Democrats joined in supporting a common sense measure. And that's what this is. It's been suggested that that this bill would do away somehow with our current permit process, which is absolutely false. Anyone who needs reciprocity to another state, anyone who is not sure of his or her ability to qualify, would need to go through the existing program and obtain the permit. It's been suggested that having a permit in your pocket, in your wallet, somehow tells government who has weapons and who does not, who lacks the permission to have a weapon. Well, of course, that is not true. Criminals do not apply for the permit. Criminals do not abide by our laws. People who commit violent crimes are not seeking a permit to do that. The concealed carry permit is issued by government to people who prove themselves worthy of obtaining permission to go out into public and do nothing wrong. A concealed carry permit does not allow one to display the weapon, discharge the weapon, threaten people with the weapon, shoot the weapon. It doesn't provide permission to do any of that. It simply allows a person to carry that handgun concealed. So where can people in Colorado currently carry a handgun concealed without a permit? I can't tell you because I don't know you. I don't know what crimes you may or may not have committed, what training you may or may not have. I don't know. But I can tell you what I know, what is true for me. I know that without a permit that I can carry a handgun concealed upon my person, in my home, and on my property. I know that I can carry a handgun concealed upon my person, loaded in my car, and I can drive anywhere in this state. There's a law that specifically authorizes the people in Colorado to do that. I know that if I'm in an unincorporated part of my county, that I can get out of my car and carry open. But if I'm in certain home rule parts of the state, that I'm not allowed to carry open. I know that if I'm actively hunting in Colorado in a game unit where I have a license to actively hunt and it's during the season for that license, that I am allowed to carry concealed without a permit. But I know that if I get out of my car in a place where open carry is permitted, allowed, outside of a home rule city like Denver, that I have to pay what was earlier referred to as the coat tax. It got that label when my legislative aide at that time in 2011 stood up in a committee hearing with a dummy practice plastic thing that looked like a handgun and demonstrated without the coat, no coat tax. With the coat, you have to pay government for the permission to go out in public and do nothing wrong. If you have a permit and you go out into public and you do something wrong, you lose the permit. It doesn't give you permission to do anything violent, to do anything wrong. All that permit does is allow you to wear your coat and have a weapon. I think it's worth noting that in the states that have adopted concealed carry and now constitutional carry, I think Alaska, Wyoming, I believe that Kansas is now doing this, Arizona, violent crime with weapons tend to go down as we encourage law-abiding citizens to practice that activity and protect themselves, that violent crime actually goes down. The concealed carry permit process would not go away. I had never applied for a permit until last summer. I knew that I qualified. I was willing to take on that responsibility on my own shoulders because I know all of the questions on the application to purchase a handgun and virtually the same questions on the application for the permit process, but I haven't carried concealed. I haven't needed reciprocity until last summer. So I broke down and I paid the coat tax. And you know what? I qualified. No big deal. Except I had to pay the $152.50, the coat tax. And there's something that I really would ask everyone to please consider. That is a form of poll tax. If you can't afford it, you can't get the permission to do that. When I ran the bill in 2011, there was a single mother who broke down into tears and said, "You're the only one I've ever heard who's actually taken the time to express that. I'm a single mother. I'm separated from a man who I am in fear of. I can't afford the permit." A reporter came to my house to interview me and asked me off camera, "Well, do you really think that we want single mothers who can't afford the permit to have a weapon?" And I stopped and gasped. Do you think that a constitutional right should be based on your ability to afford it? Do you think that we should discriminate against people based on their means? And the reporter stepped back and said, "No." And didn't ask me that question on air. So if you're thinking those thoughts, please evaluate that for yourself. Be thoughtful about that because the Constitution applies to all equally. And this permit system that we have does serve good outcomes. And to my friend, the senator from Colorado Springs, thank you for pointing out the good that the permit system does. But would this Senate Bill 32 allow people who don't qualify to suddenly qualify, to just go out and do that? No. If there's something that would prevent that person from obtaining a permit and they're out in public doing nothing wrong and they have a handgun, the first question is, how would anyone know? But if law enforcement discovers that and they don't qualify, they've just put themselves in a situation where law enforcement could deal with them. If they're a felon and they're not allowed to have a handgun, Senate Bill 32 would not allow them to suddenly carry concealed or open. They're not allowed to have a gun. If there's some restraining order, something that would prevent them, and they have self-qualified, like I knew that I qualified, if they take that upon their shoulders and they're wrong, the punishment is theirs. But the aspect of concealed carry that I find so many who don't participate in concealed carry miss or ignore is that if a person is walking around in public carrying a handgun concealed upon his or her person, regardless of whether or not they have that government-issued expensive permit in their pocket, it doesn't matter whether they have that. If they're not doing anything wrong, how would we ever know? And the fact is, we don't. It's when law enforcement becomes involved. There's some altercation. My friend from the senator from Denver pointing out that when those worst circumstances come about and some violence occurs, does that permit give permission, authority to a permit holder to commit violence? No. It's simply to be there in a nonviolent atmosphere, not doing anything wrong with their coat on. But if that weapon comes out, the permit doesn't do anything. The evaluation by law enforcement on any violent action comes after the permit. And what my friend from Fort Collins, we have to honor that both directions, the senator from Fort Collins, what I appreciate about Senate Bill 32 is that it really brings us back to the Constitution and honoring people of all means to determine for themselves whether they will be responsible for this activity. Can a permit holder do something wrong? You bet. Can someone who doesn't have that permit go out into public with a handgun and do nothing wrong? Yes. That's all Senate Bill 32 seeks to do, is take away the requirement that a law-abiding citizen in this state who otherwise qualifies would be able to go out into public with a handgun, do nothing wrong, and not have to pay the coat tax. Because whether you like it or not, that is a limitation for people of means. Until last summer, I did not want to ask for that permission because I didn't carry concealed. I don't generally. But suddenly I had the opportunity, the need for reciprocity in another state, and I went and filled out the application. I paid my sheriff the $150, and government told me what I already knew. I qualify. Is anyone more or less safe because I have a piece of plastic that cost me $152.50 to obtain? No. This bill would not allow criminals to do anything that they're already prohibited of doing. It doesn't change the dynamic there. What this would do is allow law-abiding citizens the alternative, the option of paying that fee to their sheriff to go out into public and do nothing wrong. I ask for your aye vote on Senate Bill 32.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had to respond to my colleagues from Parker and my colleagues from Fort Collins on a couple of things. One, there is no constitutional right to concealed carry, not in the U.S. Constitution, and as I read to you this morning, certainly not in the Colorado Constitution. Number two, it was asserted that concealed carry makes a state safer. Well, not according to studies done by Georgetown University, Stanford University, and Johns Hopkins University, all that showed that the right to carry laws are associated with an increase in violent crime, that the right to carry laws are associated with substantially higher rates of aggravated assault, rape, robbery, and murder, and that the murder rates increased in the states with existing right to carry laws in the period from 1999 to 2010, and the homicides increased in 8 states that adopted right to carry laws during those 10 years. Colleagues, I would urge you to vote on the safety side of Colorado citizens and vote no on this bill.
Senator Crowder.
I will be brief. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sit there and listen to this debate on this, and I do believe that safety is a concern. I think we're getting into a more dangerous world as every day goes by, and I think this will keep this concealed carry law that I support, I think will keep us somewhat safer. I'm not sure that any time that you expand freedoms is a bad thing, and I think that's what this does. And I will be in support of this concealed carry, but I do believe that, you know, the way the every day is a little bit more dangerous. We see what's going on abroad. I don't think that we should be isolationist. I think we should be realistic and maybe the possibility of some of this spilling over into this country. So I think it's prudent upon us, and I think it's, you know, it's something that if we want to continue to have that secure and safety issue at heart, I think we ought to look at allowing this, because I think it's a situation that could help us in the future. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 32? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 32. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 32 is adopted. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 105.
Senate Bill 105 by Senator Martinez, Humanic, and Representative Primavera, concerning the continuation of the regulation of respiratory therapists by the Director of the Division of Professions and Occupations in the Department of Regulatory Agencies in connection therewith implementing the recommendations of the Department in its sunset review and report on the profession.
Senator Martinez Humanic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 105 for approval and ask for my colleagues' approval on this bill. This is a sunset review bill for respiratory therapy.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 105? There is an amendment on the desk. Senator Lundberg, or Mr. Majors, please read the L003.
Amendment L003 to Senate Bill 105 by Senator Lundberg, amend printed bill page 9, line 25.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L003.
Very good. To the amendment, Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is a cap on the fees. This is not establishing fees. This is a cap on the fees that DORA could charge on licenses for respiratory therapists. It is actually a reasonable cap. Just to give you a small history, the application fee was $85 for several years, and then they ran into some expenses and legal fees, and they had to raise it in 1 year to $163. This puts it the cap at $175 for application and at $100 for renewal. The reason I propose this is a policy that I believe the legislature should get back to. You know, when I started back in 2003 and I was over in the House, it was a standard procedure for licensures to have fees that were established by the legislature. And then in the last dozen years or so, we've moved to just give DORA the authority to set it anywhere they want to. I believe that we need to find a common middle ground here and set a cap so that we don't see rate shock for people who are required to have a license to engage in their profession. And this is no small issue. In committee, DORA told us that 15% of the workforce in Colorado is actually under the authority of their licensing procedure. Those fees can go up far too quickly and sometimes without much, I believe, appropriate logic. I'll give you an example I already gave you for the Respiratory Therapist Act, which we have before us today, but right after the real estate crash in 2008, 2009, in that area, the number of real estate agents dropped in half. Well, DORA had a very quick fix for the license fee. You probably guessed it. They doubled it. It went up by a factor of 2. And that was on the, the poor agents who were still struggling to stay in business in that very tough environment. I believe we need to draw the line and say, you can raise the amounts and hopefully not always to the limit, but to state that there are reasonable limits. Therefore, I submit the amendment 003, ask for its favorable adoption, and I ask you to look carefully at this policy for the future as well. I believe it's something we need to reevaluate every time we have a licensure sunset review before us. Thank you.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, I'll ask for a no vote on the amendment, and I'll do so because of concerns about the way this affects the Division of Occupations and Professions Cash Fund. You need to understand that all of these regulated professions that we see through these sunset reports, their licensing fees that they pay for licensure and renewal of licenses are all put into the same cash fund at DORA. And there are sub-accounts within the fund for each of the different professions. They try to manage that so that no one profession is subsidizing another with their fee structure. And when we put things like this in statute that interfere with the ability of the division to set fees as necessary for each separate Practice Act and licensing scheme, you create a situation where you're creating a risk that one profession will begin to subsidize another, because the respiratory therapists in this instance would be the only ones right now with this cap in place, and if that cap becomes a problem, the solution is to bleed over into other parts of the cash fund that have been contributed by other types of professionals, and you have one professional licensure class subsidizing the regulatory scheme for another. That is not how this should be managed, and so that is why I would urge you to take a hard look at this amendment and realize that it is reducing the amount of flexibility and responsiveness the agency has, and also making it more difficult for them to manage that blended cash fund of all these different professions that all pay into the Division of Professions and Occupations cash fund. This is a bad idea, and I would urge a no vote.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I do want to make the point that it is important that the legislature maintain its authority in determining the costs of government for the people of Colorado. And when we put the fee-setting structure completely in the hands of a department, we invite excess. It's just a reality because there is not the competitive environment of the private sector. I do recognize the dynamics that the senator from Denver just explained, and understand this is not setting it at a fixed level. It's giving it some headroom and simply saying not beyond this amount. And I believe we need to be reasonable in where we set it, but not give them the ability to literally double fees. I believe that this will require the department to think a little bit harder and work a little more creatively in holding those fees to a reasonable limit. Again, I urge the adoption of this amendment and careful analysis of what the policy should be. In my opinion, it's the legislature who sets the costs for the people of Colorado, and when we put it on automatic pilot with the department, we invite prices to go up for the people of Colorado.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to rise also in opposition to this amendment, and let me give you a real-life example. As I mentioned to many of you, I served on the Colorado Medical Board a number of years ago, and if there's a complaint against a physician, you can put in a response, and sometimes an investigation is started. The ability for DORA to do these investigations and resolve the complaints is based on their budget, and there were times where the medical board was a year and a half behind because they didn't have an adequate budget to manage these processes. And so I think as a matter of consumer safety, it's important that we allow the division to set their budget. And they do this every year, and they justify it based on how much they had to spend. And so it may be some years that the fees for licenses actually go down because there were not many complaints or investigations required. And so I think this flexibility is important. We do ask DORA to account for these every year when they bring in their budget to the JBC, and I would ask that you vote no on this amendment.
Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Colleagues, I think that my colleague from Denver County made some very good points, and a prior amendment did not pass out of committee, and I do think that there are some unintended consequences with this, so I would ask for a no vote on the amendment.
Is there further discussion on L003? Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I have a senatorial 5?
We'll stand in a senatorial 5. Senator Lundberg.
I renew my motion for L003.
A division has been requested. The question before the body is the adoption of L003 to Senate Bill 105. Will all those in the chamber not entitled to vote please be seated? All those in favor, please stand. All those in favor of L003, please stand. Please be seated. Those opposed, please stand. The chair is not in doubt, and L003 is lost. To the bill, Senator Martinez Humenick.
Colleagues, I move Senate Bill 105 forward and ask for your favorable approval.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, and colleagues, I rise in support of this bill as well, and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 105? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 105. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 105 is adopted. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 123.
Senate Bill 123 by Senator Crowder and Representative Primavera concerning the ability of a person eligible for prescription drug benefits under a health benefit plan to choose a pharmacy in which to fill a prescription drug order for certain medications.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that Senate Bill 123 lay over to February 20.
The motion is that Senate Bill 123 lay over till February 20. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 123 will lay over to February 20th. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 93.
Senate Bill 93 by Senator Sonnenberg concerning compensation to be awarded to owners of mineral interest for a diminution in the value of their property rights caused by regulatory restrictions on mineral extraction operations.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that Senate Bill 93 lay over to February 20.
You've heard the motion to lay over Senate Bill 93 to February 20th. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 93 will lay over to February 20th. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 64.
Senate Bill 64 by Senator Sonnenberg concerning limits that the basic tenets of Colorado water law place on the ability of certain federal agencies to impose conditions on a water right owner in exchange for permission to use federal land.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 64 and the committee report on agriculture.
To the Agricultural Committee report, Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee report was just a clarification, a couple of things that needed added to limit the scope to the Forest Service and then BLM. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on the Agricultural Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Agricultural Committee report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill is one that we've worked on for a number of years now to make sure that the federal government does not overstep its bounds with regard to Colorado water law, and to make sure that Colorado water law remains in control of our property rights as we deem necessary here in Colorado. I would ask for your yes vote.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for a no vote on this bill. This indeed is a running bill. Year after year, we talk about this issue. And because of that, a lot of people have been sat down, both at the state and federal level, trying to sort through this issue and have not reached any kind of agreement. And we're yet going ahead with this bill that says that the U.S. Forest, the state, it directs the state not to cooperate with U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management. Where have you seen that in the bill? We shouldn't cooperate with other people who think they have a vested right in something that we may disagree with or agree with. Secondly, it runs afoul of established public-private rules governing water administration. many of which require cooperation with the federal government. Bypass flows are important, and the breadth of the bill is the thing that got me in committee. I was told it's no more than a legislative declaration, but yet when you go in and look at page 5, line 20, there's a severability clause, which means that any part of the bill is lost, probably because it's declared unconstitutional or something like that, that it still holds. So if it's just a declaratory language, why put a severability clause in? For all those reasons, probably most primarily because I think we should have the agencies talk before we take action, I would ask for a no vote on this.
Senator Ulibarri. Senator Sonderberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I need to address that so you're not misled. On page 5 of the bill, starting in line 6, my good friend that serves on the Ag Committee with me stated, the state and division engineers shall not cooperate with the United States Forest Service or the Federal Bureau of Land Management. But what he didn't tell you was the rest of that says, in administering a rule, policy, or directive that applies to any conditions set forth in the paragraphs earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about is the federal government coming in, and let me just give you an example. Although this happens in mining, it happens in energy, it happens in agriculture, but let me give you an example of the ski resort. A ski resort may lease land from the federal government in which it builds tow lifts, buildings, infrastructure, whatever it needs to do so. And then that ski resort also takes water that it has or purchases more water for the use of making snow. In this scenario now, as that ski resort goes back to renew its lease with the federal government, what we have found is the federal government, as a requirement of continuing that lease, is requiring that ski resort to sign over the title to their water rights. That was in a movement put forward a couple years ago, which started driving this, and which I've been working on now for 3 years. What this says is, federal government, under our Constitution, you are not given the ability to oversee our water. We should not allow them, as a condition of a lease, to take someone's property. That's what this bill is all about. And if there is a question on whether or not the state engineers should cooperate with the BLM or the Forest Service with regard to enforcing a rule put forth by the BLM or Forest Service, I think that's highly appropriate. I want that in the bill. That's the reason for the bill. I ask for a yes vote.
Senator Ulibarri. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise also in opposition to this bill. I want to speak to the longer history, and I appreciate the good senator bringing this bill forward and this debate, but I want to acknowledge some of the underlying facts of why it hasn't moved forward previously. So the initial rationale behind this bill, which was the conflict between the U.S. Forest Service and Colorado's ski industry over water rights and permitting, was legitimate, but the U.S. Forest Service is not pursuing the offending permitting change and has stated it has committed to a permitting process that does not require the transfer of ski area water rights. So this bill is a bit premature. I think the other piece here is that when we're looking at this issue specifically, it speaks to the challenge of us with this issue specifically and our relationship with the federal government. I think this law has potential unintended consequences and could potentially be unconstitutional. I think, as was raised by the senator from Louisville, that we acknowledge, I was going to say Longmont, but the senator from Louisville, when we look at this bill specifically and its constitutionality, the fact that there's a severability clause in a legislative declaration raises some flags for me. But we know, because of the Office of Legislative Legal Services has done some research on our behalf, that there are constitutional questions about this. It may violate both federalism and our state constitution by intervening in this regard, and I think that's a bad place for us to go. I don't want us to open ourselves up to potentially many lawsuits about this issue as negotiations are ongoing with the federal government. I think that's the more prudent way to go to protect our rivers and our water in the state of Colorado, and so I respectfully ask for a no vote.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the senator from a suburb of Sterling trying to clarify this language. That's the way we think of it in Louisville. And I'll read it. The state and division engineers shall not cooperate with the United States Forest Service or the Federal Bureau of Land Management in enforcing or administering a rule, policy, or directive that implies any of the conditions set forth in paragraph A, subsection 10, and that refers to rights of way and special use permits, which is the issue at hand. And so it goes on to say that they shall not, the state division engineers should not expend any public funds related to enforcement or administration of any such rule, policy, or directive. Members, this is premature. I think it's an issue we really need to pay attention to as a state. But I think right now we should be voting no and let the process of working through these issues happen before we take action.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to throw in a couple things here on this bill. During the debates we had a couple of years ago, the ski area that's in my district, Powderhorn Ski Area, was actually the ski area that was brought to the argument. I mean, this is where this all started. The federal government came after the water rights for Powderhorn Ski Area, and until Senator Udall, I believe Congressman Polis and Congressman Tipton got involved, the U.S. Forest Service would not back down. But then they did finally back down. Now, I don't know what's going on with the U.S. Congress right now. I can't speak to that, but I know they are working on an action because this is a huge problem. They had every intention of taking that water from Powderhorn Ski Area. In committee, I remember specific testimony from the U.S. Forest Service when we sat there in committee, and we looked at them and said, "What were you doing?" And they said, "Well, we weren't really trying to take that water." Then we said, "Well, why did you sue them? Why were you trying to go after that water? Why did you even bother if you really weren't interested in taking that water?" They had no answer. For that reason and that reason alone, I'm fully in support of this measure because we need to protect our water in the state of Colorado. We need to protect our ski areas specifically. That's a huge amount of commerce for us. Matter of fact, one of the owners of of Powderhorn is from the Vail area, and he fought incredibly hard to make sure we didn't lose this water and this water right. These people invest millions and millions of dollars in these operations. We just can't let the federal government come in and do a taking and take that water. This bill will protect us from that. I urge a yes vote.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'd like to read that aspect here again. The state and division of engineers shall not cooperate with the United States Forest Service. That's why this bill is a just bill. Another individual said this is before its time. This bill should have been done about 10 years ago. The problems we've had with the federal government over Colorado state water law is to the point where it's ridiculous. You know, the federal government, they own the federal land, but they need to adhere to the Colorado state water laws. And, I'm in total support of 64, and I appreciate the individual from northeastern Colorado bringing forward. But I do have a question on the committee report. I'd like to have just a brief conversation with the if I could. My question is this. On the minute, it says a water right is a property right that exists separate and apart from any interest in land. That's actually section 3. And that's the only question I have on this bill, because there are times when, even though it is water and land are separate issues, there are times when it's not separate. And that's what I want to get from the originator and see what his intent was on that one aspect.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as we look at the amended bill with the committee report, the question is it trying to separate, or what if water is still tied to the land? All this is exerting is that water is a separate property right, land is a separate property right. Sometimes they are tied together, sometimes they are not, but you need to understand that water, according to our Constitution, is indeed a separate water right.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious why, with that said, why is that in this bill? What relationship does this have to do with Colorado State Water, and is it tied to the federal land? That's the question. I'm just curious why that's even in here.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And what we were trying to do was clarify on line 16, excuse me, of the original bill, it says a water right is freely transferable apart from the land. We just felt we were trying to clarify that it is indeed a separate water right. Land is a water right. Water is a separate property right. And we were just trying to clarify that. And I don't want to throw attorneys under the bus, but the attorneys thought that was the better language. So that's what I chose to use.
Senator Crowder.
I thank you for that, and I accept that answer, and I agree with you that, you know, a lot of our problems with this issue of federal land and water is due to the unintended consequences of lawyers. And hopefully we can get back to where we need to be, but I am in total support of this bill. And like I say, I think it should have been introduced a long time ago. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 64? Seeing none, the question before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 64. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 64 is adopted. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 97.
Senate Bill 97 by Senator Aguilar and Representative Landgraf concerning the eligibility of a supplemental needs trust to receive certain public employees retirement association benefits.
Majority Leader Sheffield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move that Senate Bill 97 lay over till February 19. And colleagues, just a note, there is a multi-page amendment on your desk. You might want to look for that and read it in anticipation of tomorrow. Again, move Senate Bill 97 lay over to February 19.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 97 to February 19th. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 97 will lay over as requested by the Majority Leader. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 119.
Senate Bill 119 by Senator Sonnenberg and Representative Becker K concerning continuation of the regulation of pesticide applicators by the Department of Agriculture and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations of the 2014 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 119.
Is Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought on a bill with pests that we all ought to be down in the well here talking about this. No, that's not funny. All right. Okay. So in general, I think this is an improvement for the sunset. I do think there are other things that need to be added to the bill, though. For instance, Dora recommended that limited commercial applicators be trained as well. I think that's a good move in my mind. There should probably be a few more people on the advisory committee, somebody who works with beekeepers that pollinate and that kind of thing, and a health effects scientist. This advisory group is heavily loaded towards applicators, which is great, but you also ought to have the health effect issue at the table. And I'm not saying they don't know that, but somebody that's expressly there to talk about it. This world is changing rapidly. The sunset goes for 9 years. It probably should be 5. And another issue is around integrated pest management. If you know what that means, it basically means use pesticides less. A lot of times people misinterpret that to say use pesticides first. And so that's another thing we ought to be doing is convening a stakeholder group to make sure that our understanding of integrated pest management is the one that's, that should be accepted of using pesticides last. So I ask for a yes vote, but I think there should be improvements to the bill.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Chair, I wanted to address a couple of those conversations or comments that were made, and understand that in this bill we did add a couple of people. Understand that there's a representative from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment on this committee as well, someone from the Federal Worker Protection Standards, as well as someone in the engaged in organic agricultural production. Those were expanded. I want you to understand that we took many of the suggestions at DORA. My good friend from Louisville also talked about having a license process for those applicators. We actually took that out of the bill simply because it made criminals out of maids. What it amounted to is if you worked in a commercial environment and if you had ants in a hotel room, the maid would then have to go to training to be able to use a can of Raid, and we didn't think that was appropriate. So we took that out. That's why we made those changes. That's why the bill is set the way it is. And so I would ask for your yes vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 119? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 119. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 119 is adopted. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 115.
Senate Bill 115 by Senator Hill and Representative Pabon concerning the sunset review of the medical marijuana programs.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I move Senate Bill 115 and the committee report.
To the committee report, Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, we heard this in committee. This is a medical marijuana sunset. In committee, we had multiple discussions of the recommendations that DORA brought. There were 15 total recommendations. We ended up agreeing that 4 of these recommendations should be left to some other bills, and we approved all the rest of the recommendations almost unchanged. So I ask for your support on the committee report.
Is there further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Hill. No, that's all right. Senator Grantham will take the chair. Me, and if you could have him read L02.
Okay.
There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, will you please read Amendment L020?
Amendment L020, Senate Bill 115 by Senator Holbert, amendment printed bill page 2 after line 15, insert section 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, in committee, we talked about a cooling off period amendment for people who work in our state government who regulate the marijuana
Holbert,
industry.
will you please move your amendment?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I move L023.
Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
2-0.
Excuse me, dyslexia. L. Oh, I was just handed this by staff.
So which one are we doing, 20 or 23?
I have 2-0. We'll be in a senatorial 5.
I withdraw a motion on L020 and move L023.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was a change in drafting. I apologize, did not realize that we had two different amendments here. The intent is the same, and there was an error on L020 and the application of the Class 1 misdemeanor. The intent of L023 is to allow something of a cooling off period for people who have regulated the industry. In committee, I had suggested a 2-year sort of timeout, but working with the regulators and drafting, we have used language that is similar to another sort of cooling off period that restricts people who were in a regulatory capacity from entering the industry, and then also disclosing information, proprietary information about entities who are currently regulated. Ask for an aye vote.
Minority Leader Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for the proponent of the amendment. I actually think a cooling off period on all regulated folks makes some sense, but it's also creating a Class 1 misdemeanor. And while I do think that in each role people need to protect the information they're given confidentially, I'm curious why we're adding a criminal component in this amendment.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the question. My understanding from the regulators is that this is similar to regulation or a restriction that applies for them in other industries. So I'm trying not to invent something new, but use language that is in place for other people who are in similar capacities in different industries. I believe the Department of Revenue might be available to clarify any questions you would have outside the chamber. But again, my intent in committee was to create a 2-year timeout. I was asked to withdraw that, which I did. This language, I understand, is compliant or similar to that which exists for regulators in other industries. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L023? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L023. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That amendment is adopted. There is another amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, please read Amendment L016.
Amendment L016 to Senate Bill 115 by Senator Kerr, the Finance Committee.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L016.
To the amendment, Senator Kerr.
Thank you, different sounding Mr. Chair. As you can see, L016 is very straightforward. It simply says that any medical marijuana-infused products that require refrigeration to prevent spoilage should actually be stored and transported in a refrigerated environment. This is very straightforward. Like any other food, especially if it has eggs or milk in it, if it should be refrigerated to keep it from going bad, and people are using these products as medicine, we should make sure that they stay refrigerated. I ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion on the amendments. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Senator for Lakewood for bringing this up. Colleagues, we discussed this in committee. I think it's an important aspect. I think it's so important that we should trust people to make this decision for themselves. What they keep in the refrigerator should be up to people. If we are really concerned that the problem in the marijuana industry is we are not appropriately enforcing refrigeration, I think we've got much deeper policy problems. I understand the desire for this amendment. It was part of the original recommendations in the DORA recommendations in the Sunset Report. But with talking with a whole host of folks, enforcement and what this actually means for over-regulation of an industry, we felt like it was not appropriate. I ask for your opposition on this amendment.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, this amendment, I think, points out one of the interesting things about the process we're going through with Senate Bill 115, and that is this bill is the sunset on the medical marijuana code. Since the medical marijuana code was written in 2010, we've had Amendment 64 and retail marijuana and a whole lot of other laws that have come in. And one of the real challenges that we're going to see for this moving forward is an effort to try to align the laws and the regulatory system we put in place for medical marijuana with the laws and regulatory system we put in place for retail marijuana. And one of the unfortunate things about this bill title is that it's limited to the medical marijuana code. And actually, you kind of have to ask, does it make sense to go to this trouble right now to do this for medical marijuana edible products when we currently don't have the same requirement for other retail marijuana edible products? And wouldn't it make more sense to deal with this in a more comprehensive fashion where the same refrigeration standards or labeling standards or whatever it is you want to talk about applies to both? Because I really don't understand why we would treat a medical marijuana and edible and regulate it differently than we would treat a recreational marijuana edible. And for me, the preferred course would be to deal with this all in a more comprehensive way rather than doing it piecemeal here just inside the medical marijuana code. And so for that reason, and that reason alone, I'll be voting no, and I would just encourage you all to be mindful of that as we continue with this bill and with other discussions on this topic this year, that really moving towards alignment between the medical and retail side is one of the things I think that the General Assembly should be working on in the next few years.
Minority Leader Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it interesting that in another context, if we are talking about perishable foods without marijuana, we require refrigeration. This is so that we don't disseminate and give people food poisoning. So your brownie without marijuana in it, if it has perishables and you're basically using it in some kind of commercial setting, I mean, if you have the food by itself under regulation that would require refrigeration, add pot to it, and now you no longer have to refrigerate it. The policy concern I have here, I get that there can be such a thing as too much regulation at time, but we're here just talking about a simple amendment that's dealing with preventable food poisoning. The problem with the laissez-faire argument on this is you can't tell by a food item whether or not it has food poisoning in it or not, or whether it really required refrigeration. So this is a very modest and common sense thing we do with all food products that are really. But what makes it more compelling to me is that this is in the case of medical marijuana. We need to remember that some of the patients that are exercising their constitutional right to medical marijuana in the state's constitution may be immunocompromised. Giving these people food poisoning is a really bad idea, and I'll just leave it at that. So for those reasons, I would suggest that this is a modest, really common sense thing, just so that we are not in the case of medical marijuana disseminating food poisoning to patients that may be quite seriously impacted by that. I think the amendment makes sense and would ask for its support.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I agree completely that giving someone food poisoning is a really terrible idea. The notion that we've got law-abiding businesses out there intentionally giving people food poisoning intentionally is somewhat ludicrous. That if somehow giving the Department of Revenue and the licensed cops we have over there the enforcement of whether or not something is refrigerated is going to solve this problem, I think gets into a deeper heart in some of the philosophical divide we have here in this room. Colleagues, food poisoning and medical marijuana is not something we solve in the Department of Revenue. I ask for your opposition to this amendment.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of this amendment because, one, the medical marijuana patients do have more risk, obviously, than recreational users. I understand the senator from Denver's holistic and alignment conversation. Absolutely agree that we need it in both the recreational and the medical marijuana. However, the medical marijuana is before us now, and the sooner that we can protect people's constitutional rights to medical marijuana and protect their safety and their health in order to get that safely, then I am an aye vote. And I'll be an aye vote on the next bill that comes forward with the safety of recreational marijuana edibles as well.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, as a member of the Finance Committee, we heard this debate. Caregivers know how to take care of their products with the medical marijuana patients. Dispensaries also know how to take care of their products. We don't need to turn the Department of Revenue into the refrigeration police. Vote no on this amendment.
Is there further discussion on L016? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L016. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it, and L016 is lost. Mr. Majors, please read L015.
Amendment L015 to Senate Bill 115 by Senator Kerr, amend the Finance Committee report dated.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L015.
To the amendment, Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. L015 is about testing medical marijuana. So right now, and since the discussion's already come up about the two tracks we're on, the medical marijuana track and the retail marijuana track, right now in Colorado, we have labs that are licensed to test retail marijuana, recreational marijuana. If you would like to come to Colorado from another state, or you live here in Colorado and you would like to experiment or have fun with recreational marijuana, you can be assured that your recreational marijuana has been tested by a lab. The growers, the distributors, the sellers of that recreational marijuana, their product has been tested by a licensed lab. However, if you are a medical patient who depends on a marijuana-based medicine, that product is not officially tested by a licensed lab. So just want to make sure you get that. Recreational marijuana, it's subject to testing by licensed labs here in Colorado. That's again, recreational marijuana. Medical marijuana, medicine, is not tested by licensed labs in Colorado. It could be coming from just about anywhere, and you don't know exactly what is in it. You don't know the percentage of the active ingredient, of THC, of the actual medicinal part of the product that you're interested in taking your medicine. It is not tested, and who knows what else could be in there. Since it's almost lunchtime, we won't even talk about what else might be in that product. I think it's common sense that if we're going to be testing recreational marijuana, we should make sure that licensed labs will also be testing our medical marijuana. I ask for the adoption of L015.
Is there further discussion? Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I actually, contrary to arguing for food poisoning people, as may be argued, I think there's actually a role for testing medical marijuana. And again, here we have one of the limitations of the way the sunset is set up. Rather than what's being proposed here is that we take what we're doing on the retail side and just move it over to the medical side. The problem is what we're doing on the retail side isn't working well either. I'll give you an example with something maybe you're more familiar with. I have a pretty severe dairy allergy. And what we're doing on the retail side would be akin to, on labeling of food, some labels, some testing may say there's dairy products in it, some testing may say there isn't dairy products in it, some testing may have a warning, some testing may not. We don't have a standardized format for what that testing looks like. If we were to do the same thing in food that we're doing currently in retail, I would be a much less happy camper in terms of thinking I could eat something when the truth is there were dairy products in it, because the testing standards have not been set well. We do have a bill we're working on this year that deals with some of these testing standards, that builds a reference laboratory to say these are the standards for testing. Unfortunately, we can't solve that problem under a medical marijuana sunset. I'm asking you, rather than to take bad policy from retail and move it over onto the medical side, let's promote good testing policy that hits all of the medical and the retail and has good policy that both honors the Constitution as well as the need for safety. So under that, I don't want to be up here arguing against testing for medical. I want to be up here arguing for good testing for medical, and unfortunately this amendment doesn't do it. I ask for your opposition to this amendment.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, I rise in support of this amendment, and this actually was a recommendation of DORA as well. And in discussing, I've had the privilege of having many discussions around the issue of medical marijuana recently, and the patients are really frustrated that the non-medical has access to testing and medical does not. And I think Senator Hill is, the senator from wherever he's from, Colorado Springs, is correct that we don't really have the capacity in the recreational market yet. It's all being built up. But I think that if we put this forward, my hope would be that they would prioritize the medical market, because again, we're testing for contaminants and also testing for cannabinoid levels, which are things that families often want to know in dosing their children. So I'd ask for your support.
Is there further discussion on L0? Senator Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, just to follow up, again, I do think it's an important issue, and the good senator, who is also a doctor, understands these roles well. I'm asking for some time that we actually build some good policy here on testing, that we do give people that confidence that we're doing well. I'm actually concerned if we just take the somewhat broken model of testing we're doing in retail and move it over to medical, we're actually undermining people's overall confidence in that testing as a whole. And I'd be concerned that what we're doing is we're giving a false sense of security, a false sense of hope, back to my other analogy. So ask for your support on an upcoming bill that we're doing that's currently in the House right now, but for this, I ask for your opposition to this amendment. Please vote no.
Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm certainly glad to hear that there's other legislation in the works to fix the problems with the testing going on in the retail market right now, and I appreciate that. However, Senate Bill 115 is before us right now. This is our chance here now today to actually fix this very strange problem we find ourselves in, that you can, right now, you can get your recreational marijuana tested, but you cannot get your marijuana-based medicine tested by a licensed lab. Also, I want to point out that this was one of the original recommendations in the Sunset Report from the departments. This was in there, and this was, ironically enough, one of the provisions that the patients, the medical marijuana patients and caregivers, testified in favor of when they came into the Finance Committee. They testified in favor of this provision. So with that, I ask that for your aye vote on L015.
Is there, Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a note, one of the senators from Denver stated that we're not, I guess I don't want to paraphrase, so I guess I won't, but just going back to the fact that this doesn't happen in a vacuum. We have testing that is going on, a fledgling testing program that is going on for recreational marijuana. That program, we've heard testimony that it's not quite up to where it needs to be. We have now on our desk here this amendment that would also throw all the testing in for medical marijuana. Nobody is debating the fact that that testing should be available for medical marijuana. The question is, do we proceed in a strategic force, in a strategic focus that allows us to do what we say we're going to do, or do we just throw so many things and we put the straw that breaks the camel's back? I support the senator with other legislation that's coming forward where we can actually strategically, step by step, lay this out with the stakeholders, and I think that is good governance. So I would recommend support that bill when it comes up and vote no on this amendment.
Is there further discussion? Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, just one final one, because I do appreciate the senator from Lakewood. I want to work together on some of this. We talk about the importance of aligning our retail policy between medical and retail. Unfortunately, I just want to read some of this to you, this amendment to you. It actually moves us in separate ways, that now we're coming up with a separate medical testing, which will make it harder for us to solve this problem in the future. Again, it's a problem that needs to be solved, and I don't want this to be construed as saying we don't need to solve this problem. We do need to solve this problem, but I want to solve it in the right way. So by coming up with a whole separate testing regime, we actually fail to align the two policies, which I think we need to do on testing. The other issue when it comes to caregivers and patients, unfortunately, this still doesn't give patients the right to have their product tested. This only gives licensees the opportunity to test medical marijuana. And we heard testimony, I think every single person in finance agreed who heard this, and many other folks who agree, is we need to find a way to open up testing and get more people able to test their products. Unfortunately, this will not solve that problem either. So again, I appreciate it, appreciate the intent. I share the intent. I just ask for your support on coming up with a way where we can bring testing and retail and medical all in alignment and do it with good policy, rather than continuing the bifurcation that exists between medical and retail, and especially the testing that unfortunately time and again has not been providing the consistent results we need to actually serve as good testing.
Is there further discussion on L015s? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L015. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it, and L015 is lost. Mr. Majors, please read L014.
Amendment L014 to Senate Bill 115 by
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, this is an amendment I do support. This is just a quick technical amendment where the committee report, I just changing the wording around here. You're welcome to read it here. I'll read it for you. All we're doing is we're striking the word authority, period, and substituting the amendment we put in a committee that says authority and those visitors escorted by a person licensed by the state licensing authority. So we were just fixing the committee report to align what we did in committee. Ask for your support.
Senator Hill,
I move Amendment L014, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Is there further discussion on L014? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L014. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and L014 is adopted. Mr. Majors, please read Amendment L024.
Amendment L024 to Senate Bill 115 by Senator Stedman, amend the Finance Committee report dated February 3rd, 2015.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Amendment L024.
To the amendment, Senator Stedman.
Thank you. Colleagues, this concerns a provision in the bill that's actually in the committee report. It was one of the recommendations from the Department of Regulatory Agencies, and it's one that I disagree with. And it was to take out of statute the provision specifying the hours of operation that medical marijuana stores can be open. And the recommendation was to take it out of statute and just let that be set by rule. And, you know, I'm generally fairly open to flexibility for departments to have rulemaking authority, but there are some things where I think it makes more sense to have some bright lines. And I think rather than leaving this up to rulemaking, what we ought to do is really leave it up to local determination. That's what we've done with retail marijuana stores. There's provisions in law about hours, but locals also have some options. And so this amendment would align the hours of operations provisions for medical marijuana centers with local determinations for retail marijuana stores. And what this says is that the hours in statute are going to remain 8 to 7 unless local licensing authorities establish additional hours, but that those additional hours cannot go later than what a retail store is open, because we wouldn't want to create a situation where the retail stores, close at 7 and the medical stores are open until 8, because we already have too many reasons for people to keep their red cards and stay in the medical system when really that's not where they belong. And we'd rather see people, transition to the right place in these two distinct systems that we're trying to align. And so this is a small bit of alignment between the medical code and the retail code just on hours of operation and respecting local determinations about what they want to have happen in their local communities. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues. I appreciate the senator from Denver and the work he did on this. He brought up some important points. I ask for your support on this as well. I think it honors the need to align retail and medical while also acknowledging local authority and giving local authorities the chance to really set this policy. Understanding that we have different places and different communities in different places regarding medical and retail, and this really gives them the opportunity to do that and more flexibility. So I ask for your support on that.
Is there further discussion on L024? Seeing none, the question before the body is the adoption of L024. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and L024 is adopted. To the bill, Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. Colleagues, this is a sunset review. We've got the medical marijuana code that was put in 2010. We've got some work here to harmonize it with the retail code. We're making progress on that front. As I mentioned to you, we had 15 recommendations coming out of the sunset, and we opted for 11 of those. We already heard discussion on refrigeration. We need some more work on some of these other areas, and so I'm committing to work on those areas to come up with good public policy on testing, on caregiver registration, and how we manage the finances of this. If you are having trouble sleeping later on today, I'm happy to go over all the details of the other recommendations. I do ask for your support. We had really good discussion in committee with this. I want to just say thank you to the Finance Committee. I really did. I love the discussion we had on this. Felt like it really highlighted the disagreements and the agreements and the discussion we can have and the importance of committee work around here. We went through some of these amendments in committee, and ultimately, while we weren't all on the same page on the committee reports, it did come out unanimously from Finance, and I think highlights not everyone's happy with where this goes, but it really moves us forward in terms of making good medical marijuana policy here in Colorado, and I ask for your support.
Senator Hill. Oh, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll yield to the good senator from Lakewood.
Senator Kerr. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And where was I? I just want to reiterate some of the things that the sponsor was talking about. The committee process that went really well, and just for the record, I did support some amendments that passed in committee, even though a certain senator from Denver may have actually moved those amendments. I did have them drawn up and supported them, so I want to make sure that's on the record. But as has been mentioned up here by various senators, this process has been a good process. I think we are improving this bill as it moves along. I don't think it's perfect. I think obviously with some of the amendments that did not get on, I'll be hopeful to see if our friends in the other chamber can do something positive this session and maybe help the discussion along. I do think that it's important that everyone's aware of some of the other pieces of legislation that are out there that could also strengthen this as well. I do want to make sure that the testing piece is available for medical marijuana moving forward, whether it's in this bill or some other piece of legislation. And I think that that's a discussion. But also this overall aligning medical marijuana with recreational marijuana is an important discussion. It needs to happen. And we also need to keep in mind that there's also a reason that medical marijuana and recreational marijuana are separate. They came into existence with different constitutional amendments. They are for different purposes. So there are differences involved, but where we can align the two, I think we should. I'll be supporting Senate Bill 115 today. I urge your support as well, and also look forward to some more improvements along the way. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 115? Seeing none, the question before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 115. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 115 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion. The motion is to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee shall rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
February 18, 2015, Mr. President, your committee holds reports under consideration of the following tax bills being the second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 18, Senate Bill 32 is amended, Senate Bill 105, Senate Bill 64 is amended, Senate Bill 119, Senate Bill 115 is amended. Passed on second reading in order to gross place on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 97 laid over until February 19, 2015, retaining its place on the calendar. Senate Bill 8, Senate Bill 123, Senate Bill 93 laid over until February 20, 2015, retaining their place on the calendar.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the report.
Is there further discussion? Are there any no votes? For 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 18, Senate Bill 32 is amended, Senate Bill 105, Senate Bill 64, Senate Bill 119, Senate Bill 115 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 97 laid over until February 19th and retaining its place on the calendar. Senate Bill 8, Senate Bill 123, Senate Bill 93 laid over until February 20th and retaining their place on the calendar. Message from the House.
February 18, 2015, Mr. President, the House has adopted and transmits herewith House Joint Resolution 1014.
Introduction and consideration of resolutions. This one? Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of House Joint Resolution 1014?
House Joint Resolution 1014 by Representatives Young and Landgraf and Senators Lambert and Newell concerning Awareness Day for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move House Joint Resolution 1014, and I ask that the resolution be read at length.
Whereas, in 1963, a Colorado statute authorized the provision of services and supports for Colorado citizens with intellectual and developmental disabilities through local, citizen-controlled, and citizen-established community-centered boards and program-approved service agencies, offering an alternative to state-operated regional facilities. And whereas for over 50 years, Colorado's community-based services system has led the way for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to receive services and supports in a manner that affords them greater independence by fostering relationships between the individuals receiving services and supports and local community resources. And whereas Coloradans with intellectual and developmental disabilities in every county across the state are able to live, learn, play, and work in their communities with the dignity, choices, opportunities, and responsibilities afforded to all citizens due to the services and supports provided by local community-centered boards and program-approved service agencies. And whereas Coloradans with intellectual and developmental disabilities want a person-centered system in which they are actively engaged in making informed choices to receive the right services at the right time and in the right places. And whereas Colorado's community system for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities has a long and proud history of enabling people to move from large institutional services to smaller community-based integrated services, offering alternatives in the types of services and supports they receive. And whereas Colorado's community system for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities assists individuals in obtaining meaningful employment in a variety of settings, allowing them to work within their communities. And whereas direct support professionals assist individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to lead self-directed and empowered lives and should receive adequate wages, benefits, and training. And whereas people with intellectual and developmental disabilities should have access to comprehensible information and usable communication technologies to promote self-determination and meaningful engagement with all aspects of life. And whereas today more than 15,000 Coloradans with intellectual and developmental disabilities receive high-quality services and supports through community-centered boards and program-approved service agencies. And whereas there is a significant demand across Colorado for services and supports for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and waiting lists for services are growing. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 70th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, proclaim February 18th, 2015, to be Awareness Day for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the state of Colorado. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to community-centered boards and organizations that provide services and supports to adults and children with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families throughout Colorado.
Members, please be seated. Considering the hour, I won't talk a lot about the resolution. We had a lot of visitors coming in earlier this morning. They've had to leave because there is a large group, I think several hundred people, meeting over at Pilates or the Palace restaurant over at the art gallery here in a little while. But you know, I think the state has made a great deal of progress in this particular area. I consider this almost an educational program. It's certainly trying to apply the most modern techniques we have to work with individuals with developmental disabilities, but also teach the teachers and teach the community about who our fellow citizens are, and move from a climate of institutionalization and in some cases in the past, frankly, warehousing of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities into something that is actually productive, builds pride in individuals' lives, and allows them to serve in productive jobs and productive community settings. We have had a pretty major process looking at regional centers and their contributions and their role in this, but a lot of the momentum, I think, is to have more community-based inclusion for individuals, and I think this is an important resolution to just have a time of understanding for these individuals and a further commitment on the part of the state to continue the progress that we've already made.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I know that we all want to leave this room and go do our committees and our work, but if you can just take one moment to think and remember about those living with developmental disabilities. Many of you know I had a brother who is no longer living with developmental disabilities, and I can tell you how the state resources impacted our lives as a family, and particularly his life, and making it as meaningful as possible. Can you imagine, and many of you can, especially my friend Senator from Denver, how intimately your life is changed when you have a person in your family who has developmental disabilities. And I am taking this moment, and I hope you can join me in taking not only this moment, but also this session in remembering those people's lives who depend on the choices that we make here in this chamber. When it comes to the budget, when it comes to the medical and health policy around those with developmental disabilities, they are relying on us to no fault of their own. In the case of my own brother, he was just born with a lack of oxygen, and that set a different trajectory on his life. So to no fault of their own, they come into this world with this situation that is handed them. And so we owe it to them to make good choices for them. So I ask also with my friend from the Springs to remember not only today, but also in the budget process as well.
Further discussion? Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew my motion and ask for an aye vote on House Joint Resolution 1014.
Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Joint Resolution 1014 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that the morning roll call be used as co-sponsors on 1014.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors to House Joint Resolution 1014. Consideration of House amendments to Senate bills. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 159.
Senate Bill 159 by Senator Lambert, Representative Hamner, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Public Safety.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate reject House amendments to Senate Bill 159 and the Senate adhere to its position.
Further discussion? Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I respectfully ask for a no vote on the motion to adhere. While there are a lot of other good measures in the supplemental that we appear to be in support of, these are lawfully collected fees that are really about shrinking a wait list. And there's no one who wins by knowingly making people wait. A longer wait either takes longer in identifying a felon or a violent criminal who should not be getting a weapon in this case, but more concerning for the overwhelming majority of people who are law-abiding citizens, they may be pursuing this for personal safety, for self-defense, for any of the number of rights and reasons that are protected under both the U.S. and the state constitutions. There's no point in making somebody knowingly wait longer here. There just isn't. Everybody wins by a good process that is expeditious as it pays its own way. So the fact that what is at issue here is how long we think people should wait. The House got it right. They got it right in a bipartisan fashion. I believe this came over here with the full support of the House, not only for the other measures that are included in the supplemental, but their vote at the end of the day was a vote for good government, for good customer service, and not making law-abiding people wait a day longer than needed, especially when the funds are already available And for that reason, not only would I ask for a no vote on adherence, but I move that we concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 159. We don't need a substitute motion. We don't do substitute.
So now, technically, we are on a motion to concur with House amendments. Further discussion. Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask for a no vote on the current motion on the table, which is to concur with House amendments. We had, members, the same debate on this. There was an amendment in the Senate that lost to add more FTEs to CBI. To do this, there has been a discussion of the extended wait list, which we do not believe has been extended as far as CBI has suggested that it is, has been extended. I would ask a no vote on the motion to concur with House amendments.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also ask for a no vote. Back on February 5th when we debated this, I got a hold of my sheriff and asked him what the wait list was for CBI's background checks. I got a text back saying 2-3 days. I'm thinking that must have been a typo. So I got back with him and I said, are you sure that it's not 23 days? And his response was, no. Several months ago, it was 30 days, but now they're getting background checks in 2 to 3 days. So I called him that night, and he said, we're putting out concealed weapons permits within 7 days from the time the person comes in with the application to the time they walk out the door with a permit. So today, I got a hold of my sheriff again and said, what are we currently at on the wait list for backgrounds from CBI? And he said, currently, it's still 2 to 3 days. So there is not a huge wait for law-abiding citizens to get their permits. So I ask for a no vote.
Further discussion. The motion before us now is to concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 159. Are there any no votes on that motion? Majority Leader Scheffel, Senator Hill, Senator Scott, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Roberts, Senator Woods, Senator Marble, Senator Balmer, Senator Holbert, Senator Cook, Senator Lundberg, Senator Lambert, Senator Crowder, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Neville, Senator Grantham. Please include the President. Sorry. I almost was. Senator Martinez-Humenick. With 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, that motion fails. Now we are back to the original motion, which is to reject House amendments to Senate Bill 159 and to adhere. Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew my motion that the Senate reject House amendments to Senate Bill 159 and the Senate adhere to its position.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate reject House amendments to Senate Bill 159 and that a conference committee be appointed. And colleagues, I do this because this is the normal course when there's a disagreement between the houses. And to rush into a position of adherence really is imprudent. When we have a disagreement, we go to conference committee and we work things out. That is the normal process, and this happens all the time with bills sponsored by the Joint Budget Committee. There's often amendments in both chambers, and we frequently send those back to conference committee after they've made it to this point in the process for the Joint Budget Committee to keep working on it. Now, I realize we're in a situation where heretofore the Joint Budget Committee has been deadlocked on this issue, and so sending us back to work on it further may seem like a fool's errand. But I would hope that that is not true. I would hope that there is an opportunity for our processes to work and for us to sit in conference and to confer and discuss ways to move forward. But in my mind, that is the proper course. That's what we normally do. I think it's a matter of courtesy to the people that have been working on the bill, that they be given the opportunity to go to a conference committee and find a compromise. The motion to adhere is really kind of a high-stakes game of chicken, folks. It tells the House, accept our version or else the bill dies, and we'd rather have a dead bill than have any sort of agreement between the two chambers. I think that's very unfortunate when you consider that this is a supplemental appropriation for the Department of Public Safety that has other important pieces in it that are hinged upon this one dispute. There's roll-forward authority for processing DNA analysis of rape kits that were collected from sexual assault scenes and victims. That's important work to do that DNA analysis and to keep the funding that we have provided at work in the department, producing those test results and putting that into our DNA database so for future crimes that may come along. There is also some other things here that help the toxicology lab, the state post board, and their peace officer standards and training. There are some other important issues in this bill that warrant cooler heads prevailing and a compromise being found than leaping to the posture at this stage of adhering to the Senate's position. The more prudent course, colleagues, is to send this bill to conference committee, and I ask for your aye vote on that motion.
Further discussion on the motion. Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, as you all know, there are a lot of normal motions, regular motions, when we're sitting as a body, when we consider House amendments to Senate bills. There is a motion to concur with House amendments. There's a motion to reject House amendments and request a conference committee. There's a request to go beyond the scope of the differences. There's a motion to adhere. No one of them is more correct or more polite than the other. The fact is, we've already had this debate, and we didn't have the votes to get out of here for that bill. When we have a compromise solution, we have 18 votes in the Senate, 33 votes in the House, and then the governor gets to sign it. Right now, there are not 18 votes, I believe, in the Senate to pass out alternative motions. So I would ask a no vote on the current motion to form a conference committee. I'm asking for a no vote.
Minority Leader Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also urge adoption of the motion to reject and go to conference committee. It's a good faith process. The concern about jumping straight to adherence, I mean, anyone can make any motion. It's fairly irregular to do. But if you believe in the opportunity for people to talk together and try and work it out, it's not the position you would take. It's not the motion one would do. The problem with jumping so early to something like adherence on this is, as was alluded to earlier, it's high stakes. It amounts to government shutdown of one department on things that are very critical to public safety. And we're doing this potentially over the fight to make people wait longer than is needed with funds that are sitting in the account. And so we're risking a government shutdown on the Department of Public Safety over the right to make law-abiding citizens wait longer to process their concealed carry permits. No matter which way we look at that, I just don't think it makes sense. Let's give a conference committee a chance to work it out. Let's reason together. Let's continue this discussion like we do on most other issues for the sake of public safety in this department and for the people of Colorado. I think this is a very reasonable and fair-minded motion, and I also would urge that we go to conference committee.
Is there further discussion on the motion? Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also asked for an aye vote on the conference committee request. I think this is a reasonable compromise on this. I know there's strong disagreement on this issue. It's also, I think, a pretty compelling case to be made to solve this problem. I mean, I think it bears repeating that the House voted 65 to 0 in favor of the bill as it currently stands. That means of the 100 legislators in this building, there are now 82 votes out of 100 for this bill as it currently stands. It's a pretty large number, 82 votes out of 100. I believe there are folks who have a strong preference for there to be changes to this section, but what you have is putting at risk the child abuse investigation dollars in this fund
the Child Advocacy Centers statewide that are funded by this fund, the rape kits that were mentioned by a senator previous to me, as a part of that high-stakes gamble around one provision of this. If in fact there's a substantive debate to be sorted out about this provision, if in fact there really is no backlog at all, if in fact that the fees that all these good law-abiding citizens have already paid for their background checks are not needed because there's no backlog, well then maybe the answer should be to reduce the cost of the fees. I mean, if there's no wait and it's easy to do with much less money, then we should refund these dollars back to the folks who paid them and make sure more folks aren't paying overages for a service that apparently costs far less than what we think it costs. So if that's the substantive solution that needs to be reached, let's figure that solution out. But let's not either hold hostage the rest of a public safety agenda that 82 out of 100 folks have voted for over a disagreement about how long it actually takes to do a background check. If we think that we all agree that we want law-abiding citizens to get background checks and get them quickly, let's solve that problem. I think that's what we're elected to do. This gives us a chance to do that. So I'd ask for an aye on a conference committee.
Is there further discussion on the motion? Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to rehash some comments that I had the other day when I expressed concern that when we have funds that have been paid in for a particular purpose, and that when the JBC locks down 3-3, that we have the potential to basically put everything on hold. The comment was made, well, we're discussing it. Well, here we are back with basically the same issue. And we have collected fees for a legitimate purpose, and we have the opportunity to make certain that these licenses are processed in a reasonable period of time. We seem to have some differing concepts and time frames as to how fast these are being processed. I don't think really that's the issue. I think the issue is very simple, and some of my colleagues have expressed it. We're holding hostage a whole department over the utilization of fees that have been collected and are not being used for the purpose they were intended. As I said the other day, I think this is one of the scariest things that have happened during this session, and this is the second time this has come up. I think adults should come together and figure out how to solve this problem. I would strongly suggest that we have a vehicle to do that, and sending this back to conference committee is only the appropriate way to do it. I think we have a real issue that we need to come to grips with as a body, and I would hope that when we discuss this in a conference committee, we can resolve the bigger issue, which I believe is at stake, and that's how we proceed under the circumstances that we find ourselves today. I would ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion. Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I would ask again for a no vote on this motion. You know, I am a little concerned about some of the rhetoric that's been used here in this particular motion. I think we all are adults. I don't think we're jumping into anything ill-advised. I think we've had a full debate on this bill. I don't think the bill has been locked up by the JBC. As a matter of fact, when we get to actually the bill itself, this is a very good bill. The underlying bill is very good. We've already voted on this particular, the substance of this particular motion when we had amendments on the floor. Those amendments did not pass. And I would ask for later, I hope we can encourage the House to pass Senate Bill 159. But for right now, as far as the conference committee goes, I would ask for a no vote on this motion.
Is there further discussion on the motion? Are there any no votes? Majority Leader Scheffel, Senator Lundberg, Senator Lambert, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Woods, Senator Grantham, Senator Neville, Senator Crowder, Senator Marble, Senator Cook, Senator Holbert, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Roberts, Senator Balmer, Senator Scott, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Hill. Please include the President. With 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the motion fails. Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew my motion that the Senate reject House amendments to Senate Bill 159 and the Senate adhere to its position.
Is there further discussion? Are there any no votes? Senator Stedman, Minority Leader Carroll, Senator Heath, Senator Kafalis, Senator Aguilar, Senator Guzman, Senator Donovan, Senator Jones, Senator John, Senator Kerr, Senator Ulibarri, Senator Garcia, Senator Johnston, Senator Merrifield, Senator Todd, Senator Newell, Senator Hodge. With 18 ayes, 17 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, that motion is adopted. The Senate will adhere to its position on Senate Bill 159. Consideration of governor's appointments. Mr. Majors.
Executive Director of the Department of Agriculture, effective February 17, 2015, for a term expiring at the pleasure of the Governor, Donald Cleo Brown of Yuma, Colorado, and occasioned by the resignation of John Salazar of Manassas, Colorado, appointed.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the appointment of Donald Cleo Brown of Yuma to serve as the next Executive Director of the Department of Agriculture. Members, we had toyed with putting this on the consent calendar, but since this is a cabinet level position, I wanted to just give you a little bit of background, and I know we're short of time, so I will be brief. Mr. Brown is truly a face of agriculture, a producer in Yuma County. Please don't hold that against him. His comment is, I settled in Yuma County. That's God's country because no one else would claim it. I can tell you that Don Brown has the leadership skills, the background, the ability to lead the Department of Ag over the next 4 years and work with this governor on behalf of rural Colorado. So I would ask for your support of this confirmation.
Is there further discussion? Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Donald C. Brown is confirmed as the Executive Director of the Department of Agriculture. Delivery to the Governor.
To the Governor for signature on Tuesday, February 17, 2015 at 1:43 p.m. Senate Bills 35 and 98.
Committee reports.
February 17, 2015, Mr. President, the Committee on Local Government has added in consideration as that hearing on the following appointment recommends the appointment be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Member of the Energy Impact Assistance Advisory Committee for a term expiring August 24, 2017, Daniel Fernandez of Dove Creek, Colorado, and occasioned by the resignation of Vicki L. Spencer of Gunnison, Colorado, appointed. February 17, 2015, Committee on Local Government, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee, recommends the following: Senate Bill 114 be postponed indefinitely. February 17, 2015, Committee on Local Government, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee, recommends the following: House Bill 1074 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation.
Announcements. Majority Leader Scheffel. Nope. In just a moment. Senator Hodge.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to remind people the Rural Caucus is meeting and has a lunch available today at noon in the House committee rooms. We're meeting with Ag Council to see how we can work together.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, not only do we have the Rural Caucus, we also have the Alliance Luncheon for the Developmental Disabilities. We also have the Colorado Health Institute. It has a lunch and learn today in 356. And that is, we're going over healthcare integration, including plans for Colorado's $65 million SIM grant. And they would love to see some legislators there, so join me there.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we have two schools in the Capitol today. Earlier, we had students from Pine Lane Elementary School in Parker shadowing some of us, and I apologize to the three kids who were hoping to shadow me. They got to sit there and watch and listen as I was in the chair this morning. And also now over in the old Supreme Court chambers, students from Ridgeview Charter School, which I believe is in the Fort Collins area. A good friend has led a group here, and she is waiting over in the old Supreme Court chambers. So if you have a moment to stop by and see those kids, please do so. And especially for those from the Fort Collins area, you may want to stop by and just pay a visit. Thanks so much.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. The JBC will not be meeting upon adjournment, but instead we'll be meeting at 1:30. Today we're going to be doing budget figure setting for the entire judicial branch. So if you're on judicial committees and would like to come over and join us for that interesting 185-page work product, please see us at 1:30.
Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I got around to everybody on appropriations committee in the Senate here, but for those that have bills up as well, take notice that we will be meeting at 8:30 instead of 8 o'clock. We have a very short list to do Friday morning, so if you are presenting a bill in appropriations, we'll be beginning at 8:30. And Mr. President, if I could have a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Folks, just to acknowledge some friends from Canyon City that are here today. We have members of our Canyon City School Board and our Superintendent, Robin Gouldy. Robin has been a stalwart of the community and of the Canyon City school system for years, and he is retiring at the end of the school year, and he is going to be greatly missed down in Canyon City. He's been a great advocate for education down in Canyon City, and we'll miss him. And thank you all for being here. They got the Colorado trifecta today. They got to hear guns, they got to hear marijuana, and they got to hear water being debated at the podium. So thanks for being here, guys.
Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, just a reminder that Health and Human Services is meeting upon adjournment. You do have a short bit of business to take care of, and for those of you attending Senate Judiciary this afternoon, they will not be hearing House Bill 1060. That, Mr. President, move the Senate adjourn to 9 a.m. Thursday, February 19th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will be adjourned until 9 a.m. Thursday, February 19th.